You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the second instalment of the Cricket Podcast reviews of the India v England T20 series. Today I am joined by Ross Legg. Hello Ross, how are you doing?
I'm still a little bit smug, must admit. England didn't win today, and that's okay because India followed our advice, and lo and behold, it paid off.
Yeah, well, it's almost like we have an idea about what we're talking about, but that's a little bit of a dangerous thing to suggest. I'm Maxwell Brown, and you may have noticed that we are absent Jack Hope today. I don't know where he is. Perhaps he's busy doing some Mother's Day stuff, whereas the two of us are terrible sons, so we're more wedded to the cricket. But anyway, let's get down to business then. The second T20 took place today in Ahmedabad after England had comfortably won the first game of the series. India won the toss and put England into bat, as England had done to India last time out. And things didn't get off to a great start for England. Jos Buttler went early, but Jason Roy came back well, and England looked like they were probably going to set a fairly decent target on what looked like a very slow pitch, but some excellent bowling at the death saw England sort of falter and make their way to 164 for 6 from their 20 overs. And it sort of went similarly at the start for India. KL Rahul went very early on, and we thought that this was looking like it could be a good tight match before Ishan Kishan came in and blitzed a 50 off 32 balls. And Virat Kohli ably supported with his 73 for 1, ultimately ending the game very comfortably for India and a 7-wicket win to take us into the third game. So to start off, Ross, very different result and performance from both teams from Friday's game, I would say. What do you think were the main factors for you?
I think India played absolutely brilliantly. So a complete contrast to the first game. There could be nothing taken away, regardless of how poor England may have been in the different facets. I thought India nailed their plan. In terms of winning the toss and bowling first, I think that is always a big advantage. There's obviously the stats that back it up that you win, 60% of your games when you're batting second. But here, India got on top. They bowled to their plan and didn't really let England get away from them at all. And I think it probably starts with India's selection. So on the last, 3-4 podcasts, we were talking about India's selection coming up to this T20 series. And last time they picked their ODI side. This time they decided to bring in Ishan Kishan and Sky. And you saw firsthand. So all of the doubters who were screaming at us in our YouTube comments and getting in touch with us on Twitter around, no, you're wrong. Sorry, this guy is unbelievable. And the approach that he took was exactly what they needed at the top of the order.
Yeah, I think it wasn't just this series that we were talking about Ishan Kishan. It was in the Australia tour as well. He didn't make it into the T20 side there, and we were a bit perplexed after his. I mean, he had a brilliant IPL last time out, and some people have been saying to us, well, you can't look at the IPL. It's different to the Indian T20 team, but I would suggest that maybe the IPL, where you have a lot of data, where there are many games of some of the best players in India and the world facing off, is probably quite a good example of how they might get on in international cricket. But obviously it's only one game, but so far Ishan Kishan is looking like he may well be the player that we suspected he would be. The other mentioned Sky didn't really have much of an impact on the game. Put down one catch, tipped it over the bar. Took another one just about and didn't get to bat, so we will wait to see whether he gets a second chance. But I think the other thing with India's selection was do you think it was quite risky what they did? They only went with 5 bowlers. There was nowhere to go apart from those 5, and especially when one of those is Hardik Pandya, who hasn't really bowled a huge amount due to injury over the last few months. I mean, it paid off, didn't it? I mean, that's fair enough. But do you think that was a risk?
Well, the thing is, I think India have a set of like, elite bowlers. We've talked about their kind of depth and their expertise that they have in the bowling department. And you saw today, like Bhuvneshwar Kumar coming back and being the bowler we know he can be. Like the guy has got, was it the orange cap when you're a bowler, or is it the purple cap? Purple cap.
Yeah.
In the IPL once or twice, and you just saw the control and the seniority of that kind of performance. Pandya clearly had he was pretty much vice captain, wasn't he, on the field? I have no idea if he is actually is vice captain of the side, but he was there in the action, and he took full advantage of what was going on, especially towards the end. You talked around the death overs for India. England were pretty well set up for where England wanted to be, really. I think we were about 120 off about 11 overs. And there was a bit there where we just like, right, we're going to press on here. And India just didn't let them do it at all. They took wickets at important times. And as I said earlier, they were really disciplined of where they bowled. What I was really impressed with was all of the compression sleeves on show throughout the game from all kinds of players. So Hardik Pandya is wearing them. Sam Curran's got them on. Jofra, Ben Stokes. So I'm really looking forward to seeing kind of the amateur cricketers kind of wear them throughout the season in England. I think it'd be like some guy called Chaz coming in bowling like 55 miles an hour dobbers, being like, "Yep, need these on just in case I get swelling in the old elbow."
Well, maybe the leisurely tennis he's played the day before with his geriatric companions is the reason for the required compression sleeves. You don't know what they get up to in the rest of their time. I mean, yeah, England. You mentioned how we expect them to kick on, and they didn't score a boundary in the last 5 overs of their innings, which isn't ideal when you're trying to set a target. But it looked. Well, England made it look pretty tough to bat on. It was fairly obvious that the ball was sticking a bit in the surface, and some were going through very low. Jason Roy was the only real player apart from Bairstow to score particularly quickly, I think. What was that? Or Morgan as well. But Jason Roy scored 46 of 35 and was probably the standout performer. But even he didn't exactly. It wasn't a fluent 46, was it? It was a bit edgy.
Yeah, it's interesting with Jace because in cricket you're typically told that a batsman is judged on how aesthetically pleasing they are when they hit runs. Like you look at Ian Bell
in England for sure
in terms of. Yeah, in England, definitely. But here, like Jason Roy hits ugly runs. But if the ball goes to the boundary, it still counts the same as if a glorious cover drive goes to the boundary. And it's kind of that kind of approach that is kind of worked with him really well because when he was Serena Williams-esque down the ground on some of them. And it was mightily impressive from him. And it's great to have him back in a bit of form. But I do agree with you, Max. I think there was almost... It was a little bit difficult, but there's no way you can put this down to conditions. So the Sky commentary team were saying, "Oh, well, we've got to get ourselves about the pitch. Like it's going to change when they got the dew factor, etc." England were in that position in the last game. They won the toss, bowled first, and capitalised on it here. So I think you can't put it down to that. I don't think. Another thing on the Sky commentary, and although it is better than what we were listening to for the test matches, because it's a little bit less partisan, it does make me laugh when Ian Ward starts talking about data analytics and matchups, etc. It kind of reminds me of when I was teaching my granddad how to use like the internet on an iPad. And he's like, "Oh, the World Wide Web, is it this way?" And it's like, "Oh, he's trying. It's so cute."
Oh, it's good. All right, it's right. It's getting we've talked to Dan Weston a lot, our friend of the podcast, and he's always got some interesting things to say. And I think it's good to get the data into the mainstream. It's just maybe Ian Ward might not be the right person to get that data analytics knowledge into the cricket watchers of the world. But at least they're trying, Ross. I think that's it should be lauded, and it's a step up from people talking about the slot. Which I still find annoying. The slot is not a length. There's a width to the slot as well. but that's just my own bugbears. So I mean, we've talked about England and how they faltered. They didn't. I mean, they batted okay, but obviously India pulled them back towards the end. And you said it's not. We can't put it down to the conditions. What are we putting it down to then? Is it India? Was it India batting brilliantly? Did England bowl badly? Or as often is the case, was it a combination of the two?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I think in England's innings, India were pretty dreadful in the field. And there's been obviously loads of stuff around. The IPL has made some fantastic cricketers, and the franchise cricket has really seen a step up in the quality of fielding that you could see. But it was fair to say that Thakur and Sky were clearly playing a different game. But there was a bit for me where England also just looked completely different to what they did last time. India here had a clear bowling plan, had a clear plan on how they were going to approach the game, and it was still relatively similar to how they have typically approached T20 cricket for a little while now. Like with under Kohli's captaincy, restricting a team to around 160 and then bossing that chase or then defending that 160 is kind of what they've done, and it's what they're really good at. It's what Virat Kohli has built his kind of game around. But here, they had a couple of better players than they did from the previous game, kind of in those key slots. It didn't matter that KL Rahul decided that India would be better off having 19 overs and only 9 wickets to try and chase this down, because they had someone who they had an elite 2020 player opening up the batting for them. And we can wax lyrical about Ishan Kishan all day, but he was ultimately the difference between the two sides. Like, he scored so quickly, set up that, they talk about setting up the platform in old terms, whilst Kohli could bat around him. And then the likes of Rishabh Pant can come in and hit a 200 strike rate. So it was exactly what they needed to do. From an England point of view, I think we were shocking. So with the ball, I think we were completely different to the last game. Mark Wood missing out through injury clearly just changed every single plan that England seemed to have. And Morgan's captaincy was lauded in the first game. So, oh my God, everything that Morgan was doing, it was unbelievable. Here, we decided to pick Tom Curran, who I don't rate really at all. I think in the IPL, he's got the highest runs per over kind of conceded. I think it's about 11.5 is his average that he goes for.
All right.
Which isn't great.
No.
Not
well beating.
And then we changed it up. Like, Tom Curran, great opening up the bowling. But when Kohli comes in, I was kind of thinking, right, you're going to have Archer at one end and you might bring Adil Rashid on then. It was almost as if the matchups kind of got the better of what they were talking about. So Ishan Kishan, supposedly really, really good against leg spin. But Rashid is a world-class leg spinner. Just because the matchup says you are pretty bad or pretty good against a certain type of bowling, you've still got to face off against a bowler. And the level of bowling in terms of quality for Adil Rashid is a little bit different compared to some of the other bowlers that he's smashed around who are also leg spinners.
I was surprised that Adil Rashid didn't come on, didn't come in earlier. But they did mention, didn't they? I think in the commentary box beforehand they mentioned that they wouldn't be surprised if Adil Rashid opened the bowling because of the dew, which obviously they had in their head, because that's what that's what they like to talk about at the moment. It's the dew factor now. It's not. We've moved on from the pitches of the Test series, and we're now on to condensation of water when it gets dark. But I was surprised Adil Rashid didn't come on, because even. You sort of have to. It's brilliant having matchups, and that has got England a long way, and that is obviously data driven. But you also then have to consider who your best weapons are to get the opposition players out. And Ishan Kishan, well, he was the player of the match. He proved to be one of the most important players for India in this game, and a dangerous player. And in the end, it was Rashid who got Ishan Kishan, albeit far too late, but. I think he was dropped as well, wasn't he? Was it off Adil Rashid that Ben Stokes dropped Ishan Kishan the first time round?
Yeah, it was. That was probably the biggest hitter you're going to see at the international level. Really, it was just a dolly hit straight to kind of mid off, and Ben Stokes kind of didn't know whether to go here or here, and he went here, and it just hit him and fumbled out. And
it was good. It was the classic not knowing which way round to have your hands. We've all been there. And it's all happened to us as badly. But
I think that point, Max, though, is really important, right? So that fielding element to it, those dropped catches in the first match, England didn't put a foot wrong. We took every catch, we fielded really well. Everyone was on it from kind of ball one. Here, we dropped Kohli down the leg side. I mean, it was a
tough take, but it was definitely catchable.
Chance. Yeah, and the drop for Stokes ultimately could have been the shift in momentum that England needed.
Yeah.
and it just allowed a great player like Kishan and a great player like Kohli to crack on and just get what they needed to do done.
Yeah, I think the game may well have been a little too late by that point, but certainly the Ben Stokes drop was the last chance England had. But we shouldn't forget, you mentioned India's fielding itself wasn't great, and they probably left 25, 30 runs out there from England's innings, and it could have been over half an hour earlier than it was in the end. So so the balance you've mentioned, the sort of the balance really. You didn't. I don't think you said that word specifically, but I think that's pretty much what you're getting at about the top four that India have put together for this game. And we've mentioned that Virat Kohli perhaps doesn't play T20 cricket in the modern way. Today he definitely did, and I think that is, as you alluded to, really partly to do with the players around him. So I mean, Virat Kohli in that top order is perfect. He's the ideal player to have. But when you have players around him like KL Rahul, or someone else not scoring at a particularly quick rate, then the pressure's on him perhaps to try and force it, and that's not necessarily what he's good at. So if he's got players around him who can be that sort of driving force and score those ridiculously quick runs, he will just fit in perfectly to that slot, and I think that's what we saw today. So I think India probably their top order. I would say if you take out KL Rahul and put in Rohit Sharma, that is ideal.
Yeah, it's intimidating. On Friday's show, we said how unintimidating and how kind of like when England came out, they were just like, we're not scared of Shikhar Dhawan and KL Rahul smashing us all over the place. Like we know how to get these guys out. But it was clear from ball one that England had kind of been like, oh, we're not too sure around ball 1.1, not too sure around how we're going to get this Kish guy out. And I think you're right, Max, in terms of that setup. I think Kohli and that role that he plays in that side was clear here. There wasn't all the pressure on him to hit every single boundary and hit every single run. And that is sometimes what completely consumes a player, regardless of how good you are. Having someone like Rishabh Pant to come in at 4 is one of those things where you just like, I know this guy's going to come in, tee off from ball 1. So actually, I can go at a strike rate of 140 instead of going at 160 because this guy's going to come in and go at 180 or 200.
Well, 200, yeah. 26 off 13 it was today. So I mean, that's exactly the sort of thing that we've been talking about with how England approach the game. You get people in, and if you have your top 7 all coming in and scoring 30 or 15 balls, you're laughing. You've put together an extremely good total, and that's exactly sort of the approach that we've been advocating. So I think that was really nice to see and really exciting for this year, really, for the Indian team. I think certainly a force to be reckoned with. If they can get Rohit Sharma in there where we think he probably should be, I would be a little scared. And I think you probably are right as well. They put England's bowlers off their lines a bit. Up once Sam Curran and Jofra Archer, we should mention, both bowled really well. Kept it really tight. Both went at 6 and over or under. The rest went over double that. What were they? What did they do wrong, Ross? Like, let's look at us. Let's suppose. What did they get wrong in that bowling approach?
So I think if you compare the kind of bowlers, so if you compare today Thakur to Jordan in this case, so what they were both trying to do, like Thakur was bowling into the pitch, bowling cutters, and it was to the left-handers, and the balls were gripping in the surface, like just as they were doing in the previous game. They were kind of gripping in the surface, but on this occasion they weren't really getting up. So actually, you had people, Stokes, Morgan, they were almost like they were through their shot before it was even there. They were anticipating the bounce a little bit more, and also the Indian bowlers were bowling a little bit wider. They'd clearly just like, right, we're not going to bowl to the batsman. We're going to make them chase this kind of thing. England, on the other hand, were the opposite. England bowled into the players. They bowled into the pitch, but they bowled at the players. So there was a bit there where they kind of anticipated, they knew what was going to come. There wasn't much surprise in what they were trying to do. And the pitch didn't play that way, right? The ball was bouncing on. It wasn't stopping as much as possible, as much as in the previous innings. And I think that England just ultimately didn't adapt well enough. I think India played it perfectly, if I'm perfectly honest. And England, even if England had scored what 180, 190, India was set up to win that kind of game. The only bit that I can criticise India for is why Shreyas Iyer is still in the side. You don't need two anchors in that side. Like, even if Kohli gets out early, I get that they're so worried about it kind of all failing. But why did they not send in Hardik Pandya or Sky in that position? Like, there was no need to do. I know the game was won, but there is a mentality bit where they need just to be just like, oh no, we genuinely don't care. We're going to thump England here, and that they could have won with 7 overs to go, let alone the 3 or 4 they had left against us.
I mean, I actually think they probably played it quite well in that front. I think they did. Well, they certainly thumped us. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But we've mentioned that India are like the way they've been playing. They are the absolutely perfect team to play in a game like this, where you can keep the opposition down to around 160, 170 if they're batting first on maybe a slightly slower pitch, and then come in and just measure the innings perfectly to chase down around that target. And actually, they came in and basically won the game within 12 overs, and then just cantered to the finish, much in the way that England have done in the past. And they had over 2 overs left to finish it. So I think you might be asking a bit much for them to finish it after 13, but there's still a game to be won. You never know what might happen.
That is very true.
So yeah, I was really impressed. I've got to say, I was really impressed with the way India played, and it was really nice to see Ishan Kishan come in and do what he said. We said he could. If he'd come in and got a 5-ball duck, would have been looking pretty stupid. But fortunately not. But
even then, you got a series. But even now, you got a series now where Ishan Kishan shouldn't just be judged on this. He might well get 0 and 0 in the next 2 games. We don't know, right? There needs to be a bit where they have faith, and I think this innings gives them the credit in the bank to kind of go. Do you know what? We're going to give them a run of games. On Friday's show, when we looked at England's win, we talked about how England's approach almost like subverted what the other team wanted to do. So the Adil Rashid and us, Mark Wood bowling 191, 92 miles an hour in the middle overs was a complete change in what teams are set up to do. Like Shreyas Iyer, etc. They're not geared up to face 92 mile an hour bowling, regardless of it at 50 or not. But in this one, that is what India did to England. In India's approach forced England to do something different and a bit outside of the wheelhouse. So there is kind of those bits of the lessons learned, if you will. So shall we have a little talk now about what England need to do a little bit differently for the next game? I'll start.
Yeah.
Don't pick Tom Curran.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Can I also offer some personal advice for both Tom and Sam Curran? One would be not to wear a Karate Kid headband, and that applies to both of them. Sam Curran did it in the summer in the Test series, and he looked ridiculous. Tom Curran's gone for a black one this time and looks equally ridiculous. And then to Sam specifically, I'm sorry, mate. That hair is a disgrace. And,
it was a Slim Shady.
It is, isn't it? It is. It's like late 90s Eminem. It's poor. So just that bowling. I won't comment on the bowling because I'm. Aside from just amateur cricketer, also not a bowler. So yeah, I'll leave that to the professionals. But on hair, as you can tell with my my beautiful barnet, I can provide an opinion, and I'm afraid it's a no from me. Right, actual things that they can do better. I suppose. I think they probably got a bit stuck, didn't they? They expected the pitch to do one thing when they were bowling, similar to what they experienced with the bat, which is fair enough. I think they realised probably a little too late what was going on, and I don't remember any Yorkers. Try some of those. Chris Jordan's quite good at those. Try them.
Yeah, there was just that bit where some of the England players Last week there was a real bit around how England nailed their bowling plans and really stuck it to India.
Yeah.
Last game. This time out, it was like watching England from a couple of years ago. There was a bit where we just seemed to. It just didn't seem like a cohesive thing. It was clear that we actually needed probably another spinner in the side.
Yeah.
Moeen Ali was rested for this white ball series. We kind of thought, well, if Sam Curran was not to play, it'd be kind of Moeen Ali. If Mark Wood's not to play, actually Sam Curran can kind of pick up those overs, and actually we could bring in Ali, especially on a worn pitch. Washington Sundar actually bowled reasonably well in this game.
He varied his pace really nicely. Washington Sundar, I think that was a big part of why he did so well.
Yeah, and you saw he picked up 2 big wickets in Roy and Bairstow, and they were both of him kind of trying to outfox. He knows that people are going to go after him, but as you say, varying his pace, varying his line slightly. And I thought he bowled really well. If England had another spinning option, I think that would have probably been the best way to go.
So I mean that's kind of my point, which is that it's all very well having a plan, but sometimes plans don't go right, and you need to know what you're going to do to overcome that. You need a backup, and I've not seen. England are brilliant at setting plans, and they're brilliant at setting plan A. I'm not convinced they're particularly good at setting plan B, but normally plan A goes so well it doesn't matter. So maybe this is the series where we see whether they can do that.
This was a if you were to compare the performances today to kind of IPL teams, England's was definitely a Rajasthan Royals approach.
Well, there's a lot of Englishmen there, so
one or
not
two
surprising.
bowlers going to bowl a mate. Anyway, so we do have an absolutely boatload of questions from Twitter, Max.
Well, we better get to those.
Yeah, so I'll just race through a couple of them, but there are some of them we've already talked about. But one was from Ram Sound Darasawan. I've definitely said that wrong. Don't know why I'm doing this bit. But do you think India should adopt a rotation policy between Rohit and Rahul to open with Ishan?
No, I think they should drop Rahul and play Rohit and never look back. Do we know why Rohit's not in the team?
I think it goes back to our game we were playing in the Australia vs India series of where's Rohit?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We need to bring that back because where is he? He's clearly the ideal person to fill that slot in that top order. England open with Roy and Butler, and they get England off to a flying start in the power play. Could you imagine Rohit and Ishan Kishan blasting the ball around for 6 overs?
Well, Rahul has done himself no favours, but that's what we can kind of go with. This is from @LoftyCheeks88, which is I'm guessing a name related to Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Yeah. From an Indian perspective, do you think that Bhuvi is back to his best? Part 1. 2, from an England perspective, is that middle over enforcer role only possible when Wood plays?
One question that I think is probably harder for me to answer, which is the first one, because I'm not a Bhuvi expert, but he's looked great, hasn't he? Once he's come back, and he's been around in that India setup for a long time, and he's been absolutely quality for India. And I'd see no reason to suggest why he's not back to his best. He's come back straight away into the fold and bowled really well, getting a bit of swing with that white ball, which he's quite well known for. And yeah, I think he's a real asset. And with Bumrah to come back into the side, that's a really, really nice combination, I think, that India will have for the World Cup for sure, with the ability to swing it, and then the ability for Bumrah just to do what he does, which is just be really good. So yeah, great, and also good for sunrises.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your boys in orange.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing him back in the fold. As for Mark Wood, I don't think Mark Wood's the only man who can do it, but I don't think Stokes and Tom Curran are right at all. we talk about a lot of the time in 2020 cricket phases. You know, you've got the power play phase and the middle overs and then the death overs. Tom Curran is supposedly uh, more of a death over specialist with the variations he has. Chris Jordan as well with the Yorkers that he bowls. Ben Stokes, I'm not quite sure what his role is in T20. Sometimes it comes off, but often it doesn't, and he can be quite easy to dispatch, as we may have seen in a previous World Cup, which we won't go into. But I think that raw pace that Mark Wood offers is something that is quite important for that middle overs role. But
It's a real differential, isn't it?
Yeah, we do have other options there that we can call on. I think it's just a case of perhaps the selection wasn't quite right today, and that bringing Tom Curran in for Mark Wood wasn't, it's not a like for like switch, and that's possibly where England fared on. And actually, yeah, what you said about bringing in Moeen Ali. How often, especially in the IPL and games in India, do you see spinners just eating up those overs in the middle? So both probably pace or raw pace, or just that second spin option may have been a better option than bowling Tom Curran today. and the others, to be fair, they were all pretty pants, let's face it.
Pretty bad. It's quite interesting with Stokes, right? Because Stokes is one of those, we've said it before, that Stoke is a taker of great catches, but not a great catcher.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting to see like the Sky commentators, especially Rob Key, kind of wax lyrical over anyone else that you would expect to take, other than Chris Jordan.
Yeah.
Ben Stokes is the best.
I think that probably rings true in the slips. I would say in the outfield, actually, he probably is quite a good catcher. I don't see him drop many like that. That was an aberration from him today. He does shell quite a few in the slips, and take some stunners in the slips, especially to spin. But I think in the outfield, I think he's probably quite a good catcher, and I thought he could drop everything forever, and I will still love him for that one in the World Cup. Was it South Africa? Peflaquayo. Was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. We'll just remember that. Every time he drops it, we'll just remember that. Play it in your head.
So, Max, what's also interesting is around that a lot of people on this will go from England with the greatest on Friday, and they're now the worst team of all time in T20 history, kind of just the way the Twitter sphere works. But there is a bit here around, we are now poised really nicely for the next three games.
Oh,
like 1-1. You and I predicted that it would be kind of 3-2 to England in over the series.
With a super over thrown in.
Today, yeah. And I think today it would be a wake-up call for England, which I think they need. And I kind of really like your point around England need to have a couple of different ideas. It's all well and good kind of leading the way and going, oh, right, when we have this team, we can play in this way. But we need to have a backup where we don't have those players available to them, especially as Mark Wood and Jofra Archer both are fragile is the wrong term, but they are susceptible to injuries here and there. Jofra's got an elbow problem. Mark Wood's got a heel problem that kept him out this game. So England do need to have those kind of backups. But then it also comes back to who's in the squad. So if you want to play in that way, England do have now a couple of paces. Like Ollie Stone, for example, does bowl that kind of 90 miles an hour. If England want to stick with that game plan, pick the players to do it. Don't then go, we're going to change our approach completely and bring in Tom Curran. I just don't. The logic wasn't there for me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't think Tom Curran is the right person for that ride. Yeah, Tom Curran and Chris Jordan probably fill the same spot, I'd say, in that England side, even with the bat as well. Maybe not in the field, but I think that's it. I think England, they have once that they. This is a really good test actually, because this England side is set up for scoring 190 plus or chasing down big scores like that. That's what we've seen them do. That we've seen them chase down ridiculous scores over the last few years, and that is possible in many places in the world. But a lot of the time, we've seen it in the IPL a lot. Pitches can be quite slow for T20 games in India, and this is a really good test for what we're going to see in the World Cup, and a really good opportunity for England to get used to it, get an idea of what they might face, and get an idea of how they're going to build those backup plans to overcome it. So really key few games actually for England, I think, and set up really nicely for the rest of the series.
Okay, so one more question from Twitter before we head off into the sunset to dry our eyes for the evening. And this is from Jalaj Thakur saying, does India, using proper T20 teams and strategies, possibly give them an edge past this English side in the T20 World Cup?
Yeah, I think so. Home advantage is going to be it's going to be massive. We've seen the size of the crowd today. That's as much of an advantage as anywhere. There's plenty of research into that, and obviously familiarity with the pitches and conditions is another thing that we are all aware of in cricket. So 100%, if India have got the players, we've seen it in the IPL. They've got so much talent and so many players who can do it like that. We've waxed lyrical about Ishan Kishan, and we'll do it again, I'm sure. So yeah, get the selection right, and I would say they are as likely to win it as anyone else. The only reason we've been saying that we think that England are might be more likely to win the World Cup is because exactly that point. So that's what. Yeah, let's see it, and let's see some what will be probably two of the best T20 sides in the world battling it out.
And I think one of those bits of strategy actually comes in from actually picking the right captain, regardless if Kohli played a good innings today. Rohit Sharma. Let's just get this out. This is the stance that I am going to, the hill that I will die on. Rohit Sharma should be this T20 captain. Just think how good this team could possibly be when you've got a Mumbai Indians captain leading the way on this, especially over the influence of Sky, over what Bumrah plays for them as well. So does Ishan Kishan. There is just a bit there where I think India could just rev it up a little bit and be even better.
That's a lovely controversial point, isn't it? The only thing with that, it's balancing the team, isn't it? It's balancing the team in terms of players. Well, I'm just going to say it, egos. Like, is Virat Kohli going to want to not be the T20 captain? I can't see it. Whereas Joe Root would like to be in the T20 team, but he fully accepts that there are people in the England team who are maybe more geared to do it. I can't see Virat Kohli wanting to relinquish the captaincy, and it may end up, ultimately having more of a detrimental effect to the entire team than the positives you might get from having Rohit in charge. And then, of course, squaring it with cricket fans. How well will it go down? I do not know, but we've badmouthed Kohli before, and I can tell you that it doesn't go down well. So maybe taking him out as captain would be equally well received.
Well, that wraps up what we've got to talk about today. It was a fantastic win for India. They thoroughly outplayed England in this T20, and we'll look forward to Tuesday's game, where we will be providing another review, which you can catch then. Thank you very much for listening.
Have a good one.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.